And we are live with another episode of What the Flock podcast. I'm Heather from Tog Hollow Farm and Aviary.
And I'm Sean from Birds by Us.
And we have two special guests with us today. Josh Perkins, who's a member of the National Cockatiel Society Judges Panel and Chairman, and Susan Stieve. And, we'll start with you, Josh. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your aviary today?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you both so much for having us here today. So my name is Josh Perkins. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been raising birds since 2006. Well, I got my first cockatiel in 2006. And have had birds ever since. You know, they're kind of like potato chips. Once you get one, you can't just have one. you keep getting more of them. I've had a number of birds over the years, from cockatiels to lovebirds to finches to cockatoo, caiques, multiple different types of conures. But today I just have cockatiels and one sun conure. I have a relatively small cockatiel flock. By relatively small, I'm not going to say numbers, but relatively small, I guess, where I focus on breeding exhibition cockatiels. And so that's about it, I guess, on my aviary.
Okay, and Susan?
My name is Susan Stieve, and I live in Columbus, Ohio, where I work at the Ohio State University for my real job. But my second job when I go home is taking care of my flock. So I have a number of cockatiels that I raise for exhibition. And I also am involved with other aspects of exhibition with the parrots. So I have bred everything from the cockatiels to sun conures, other types of conures, Hans macaws, Alexandrines, Indian ringnecks. So I have a lot of other experience with other birds. But I've been exhibiting for about 10 years now. And I actually got started with exhibition at Josh Perkins' show in Kentucky in 2011 was the first show I attended. And it was mainly that I was there showing finches. And I won a cockatiel in a raffle, and the rest is history.
And for those of you watching, if you don't know already, today's episode will be on exhibition of birds and talking about all the showing and like what people do as far as going to shows and like exhibiting cockatiels and parrots. So as we first start, can you tell us a little bit about what the National Cockatiel Society is?
Sure. Well, the National kind of simply, the National Cockatiel Society is more than just exhibition. It's really a group of a fellowship of cockatiel enthusiasts, really, throughout the United States and even throughout some of the world. We do have members that are not just in the United States, but we are predominantly in the United States. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're the only cockatiel group in the country that is a 501c3. We were established in 1983, and pretty much what it is, I guess, is we promote the keeping of pet cockatiels as well as the promotion of ethical breeding of cockatiels with responsible breeding practices, banding your birds, and record keeping. That's kind of what our mission is.
Yeah, and that's important in all bird keeping, is proper records, keeping of bands, like that's great that you guys are doing that. It's amazing.
As far as showing cockatiels, what size boxes do you guys use?
The show boxes are 18 inches long, 17 inches tall, and they are 10 inches from the front to the back. So that's for cockatiels. And then when you start talking about parrots, usually the size is proportional to the bird, and the bird has to be able to sit upright. It needs to be able to turn around. So it can't be too confining, but for some of the macaws and birds you show, they can't be too big or you won't be able to move them around very easily.
Right. So so if your cage wasn't the proper size, you could be like disqualified from a show, or?
If you're not showing your bird to its best potential by having the correct size cage, it could be counted against the bird when being judged. But generally, especially for cockatiels, there's the symmetrical use of those specific size show boxes, but novices are not counted down if they haven't been able to buy those show boxes yet.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us, well, why don't you just go ahead and describe it for us? Like, what makes a good cockatiel specimen? If you could just describe in words, Josh.
Oh, great question. But ultimately, our standard of perfection kind of breaks down every part of what we're looking for as judges. There is a 100-point total on the standard of perfection, and those points go by a few things. So first of all, the biggest portion of the points goes towards the conformation, or the structure of the bird, I guess I would say. And that's half the point. So that's exactly 50 points. Of that 50 points, though, 20 points is size. So we want to see a bird, size and length kind of goes into that, or the length can also go into proportion and shape, but it's 20 points. We want to see a bird that has good substance. It's not too large and it's not too skinny. Should have a nice rounded chest in the front. 20 points also goes towards proportion and shape. There is a visual standard and there's also a written standard. The written standard kind of goes into a little bit better detail about what we mean by proportion on the bird, which is a big deal whenever you're judging bird. The proportion of the bird, we have what we call a 7-7-7 rule. So basically the bird should measure, and this what I'm explaining right now is for cockatiels and cockatiels only. This is not for other hookbill species or anything like that, but for cockatiels on the 7-7-7 rule, it should be 7 inches from the crown, or basically the skull cap, down to the vent, 7 inches from the top of the shoulder to the tip of the wing, and then 7 inches from the vent to the tip of the tail. That's the 7-7-7 rule. That kind of, the bird should be in proportion in that way. And then the last part of that conformation part is the crest. So the crest is 10 points. So the crest should be about 3 inches. That's what our standard calls for. It should be full fan upwards, have a nice curve to it on the cockatiel. The second section, so that's conformation. The second section is condition. So condition is basically, is the bird in good shape? If you wanted to kind of put it in simple terms, does it have a lot of pin feathers, or does it have all of its flight feathers? The birds, the flight feathers, a bird that's shown in advance, there's kind of 2 different sections. We have advanced birds and novice birds. Advanced birds are the birds that the exhibitors have maybe been breeding for a while. Their birds are held to a little bit of a higher expectation than birds that are novice. The novice birds are people that are relatively new to the hobby. So in the condition category, birds that are in the advanced section, they have to have all their flight feathers in. Novice birds, the judge might be a little bit easier on them if they had, say, clipped wings, for example. So that's 20 points. Condition is 20 points. Deportment is 15 points. Now, deportment is basically how well the bird is standing on the perch. It should be upright and proud, and from the perch, it should be at a 70-degree angle. That's kind of what we're looking for. The bird shouldn't be slouched over, or it should be showing off. They're in an exhibition show. It's kind of like a beauty pageant, so they should really be showing off well and be standing up properly. And it should have a really nice smooth top line. So basically they shouldn't have a humpy butt or what we sometimes call a hinge tail, where the tail kind of droops down. The last section is color and marking. So that's 10 points. So we look for the depth of color, the uniformity of color, if it's a bird that has some sort of pattern on it. And then staging is only 5 points on the standard, which that's basically, like Susan was explaining earlier with the show box, the staging is the show box. Is the show box clean? Is it clean? There shouldn't be any cracks in the show box. It should look well presentable. So that's kind of overall what we're looking for. A lot of people, I think, with birds in general want to look for the prettiest color, or colors catch people's attention. But as you can see in the 100-point standard, color is actually only 10 points. Color and markings is only 10 points in it. So the vast majority of what we're looking for in a show bird is the conformation of the bird, which is the size, proportion, shape, the crest, all that kind of stuff, condition, deportment, and lastly, color. So
Okay.
that's. I know that was a little bit of a long explanation, but it looks like Sean has the standard up there now, and that's ultimately what we're looking for. That's pretty much what it should look like. So as we're judging the birds, we judge the birds 2 at a time. So it doesn't matter if there are 10 birds in a show, or 50 birds in a show, or 100 birds in a show, or 150. We judge the birds 2 birds at a time. So this bird versus this bird. Ultimately, we're looking to see which one meets the standard better, and we move that one forward. And then we judge the next 2 birds, and then the next 2 birds. So it's always just 2 birds at a time. We never judge a group together or anything like that.
Okay, and how many judges are there usually on a panel, like judging birds all together?
So we have currently 15 judges on our judges panel. For any one show, though, there's always just 1 judge in a show. There's never more than 1 judge per show.
So for the people or audience that are watching, this is what a show usually looks like, right, guys?
Well, that's the end result of the show.
Oh, really? Yeah. By the way, could you build your own boxes, or you gotta buy them?
You can do either. You can buy them or you can build them. Okay. On the NCS website, there is kind of a guideline on how to build your own.
And if somebody wanted to go out of their way and buy one, do you know where you can get one from?
Yeah, there's multiple exhibitors in the United States that do make them routinely and have cockatiel show boxes for sale.
Okay.
So since we've talked a little bit about cockatiels, what makes this one's directed to Susan. What makes a perfect parrot specimen for showing? Because since there's such a wide variety of, I'm sure in a show there's several different types of parrot species. So what makes a good parrot species for show?
So pretty much for parrots, if you think about cockatiel shows, you're comparing apples to apples because you're comparing one species, the Nymphicus hollandicus cockatiel, to each other. But for parrots, you're comparing apples to oranges.
Wow.
So it's similar. There's similar to cockatiels where there's 1 judge. And the North American Parrot Society arranges its classification system. So it's typically birds from one region are shown against each other. So you compare all the sun conures, for example, to each other, and all the blue crown conures to each other, and depending on what all conures there are, compare them within that species.
Sure.
And then you pick the best conure for that section. And then when it comes to the end, you compare other groupings, mainly by geographical region. But as far as judging goes, it's pretty similar to cockatiels. It's a 100-point basis. And conformation is worth 35 points. Condition, 35 points. Deportment is interesting with parrots because you never know if a bird is going to try to bite a judge, or I've seen birds actually poop out the side of the cage onto the judge during a show. So you can't control these birds. So I think parrot exhibitors have a better sense of humor than cockatiel exhibitors. And then there's also 10 points for color and 5 points for presentation as well. So again, getting down to the show box and is it appropriately sized.
Okay.
As far as ideal, it's the same thing. You want a nice sized bird. You want good condition where all the feathers are in place, no pin feathers, that it's showing itself, it's not cringing and hiding in the corner, that type of thing.
So this question is to Josh. My question was, as far as judging goes, could a judge get his own bird on the show? Or, for example, not a judge, but let's say, for example, a host, right? The person hosting the show, could they get their bird showed?
Well, I guess I guess let me answer that in a couple different ways. So first of all, whenever we're judging, we don't know who the birds belong to. Every bird is put into their own show box, and there is a show tag that goes on each show box that's folded up. So basically, the exhibitor goes through and writes the information about the bird and themselves on this tag, and then there's a number on the tag. The tag is then folded up and stapled, and the only thing that I, as a judge, see is that number. So that number then correlates to the show tag, which the show secretary kind of keeps track of. So they keep track of all the information about the bird. So as I'm judging, I have no idea who the birds belong to and whatnot. Now, even though I say that, the birds that I breed, I know them well, and I could sell those birds to other exhibitors. Our rule in judging is that I'm not allowed to judge, or an exhibitor is not allowed to show a bird under me that I've bred or that I owned for a period of a year. So after the sale. So if I was to sell a bird to somebody, they could not show that bird under me for a year.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And furthermore, we have every hopes and intentions that our judges are upstanding people in the community. They have worked their way to get there. They're very trustworthy people. And, regardless of whether somebody's showing their bird under that judge or not, the judge should be making decisions based off the standard and not preferential treatment because they know who the bird is.
That was my biggest confusion, because I was like, what if, like, say, for example, the host, or like you said, like the judge judging the birds, like, say, for example, the host was friends with the judge. You don't think, I was like, what if, like, they would get biased and, like, pick them as the winner? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if
that answers the question.
Yeah, all of the exhibitors, the shows that I'm judging, I have no idea who the birds belong to.
Okay, that makes sense.
While I'm judging. It's not until after the show is finalized and I've made all my decisions that then we read off the show tags and announce the winners.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that definitely describes how it's, like, kept fair and whatnot. So in the shows now, obviously there's winners, and so, like, what are all the awards, like ribbons you can get? Like, what are, like, for each different place? Like, how many placements are there for the cockatiels and parrots as well?
Well, actually, I'm going to let Susan answer this question because she's the NCS points registrar. So she actually handles all of the awards.
Okay.
So I am the points registrar, as Josh said, for the National Cockatiel Society, and I am also the points registrar for the North American Parrot Society. So the whole of our birds is to earn points towards championships. Birds can earn awards, exhibitors can earn awards. Novices start low and they earn points and placements to become advanced exhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
So for a cockatiel show, a typical show starting out if you had 51 birds and 5 exhibitors, that first place bird would earn 11 points on down the line. So the second place bird would earn 10 points on down. The more birds that are entered in a show, the more points that first place bird can earn, and all the other birds that place on the top bench. Novices in the show, it's kind of like a novice show for cockatiels is beforehand, and the best novice bird will earn 10 best novice points on down the line. So there's a lot of different record keeping, and it's all based on bird leg bands. It's very important, as we talked about earlier, to have good record keeping. And if you're a member of the National Cockatiel Society or the North American Parrot Society, you can purchase leg bands through those groups. And then they're automatically allowed to collect points. So once a bird, a cockatiel, for example, has earned one best in show and it has earned 50 points, it becomes a champion. But it's the same thing. You earn enough best in show and you earn enough points, you become a champion parrot, and then you can become a grand champion parrot. And once birds become grand champion parrots, they're sort of retired from exhibition, where if it's a cockatiel, you can go on showing your grand champion and earn Hall of Fame or Supreme Hall of Fame placements. And then, so those are like show awards. And then there's annual awards for exhibitors and birds. So breeder of the year. So my band code is 24S. If I happen to place a lot of my birds in the shows I went to throughout the year, I could be considered for, all those points are added up, and my 24S band might be in the year. There's also exhibitor of the year, so I might show other people's birds too, but if I go to enough shows, those birds could help me become exhibitor of the year if they do really well. And then there's novice of the year as well, which is really encouraging for new people, novices, to get going in this kind of strange hobby that we do, where they can earn enough points to become top novice exhibitor of the year. So that's kind of a fun thing. So we give those annual awards out at our specialty show on Labor Day weekend for the cockatiels.
Okay. And so quick question along with that question, what awards do you guys all have? Like what are some, just I'm sure you guys have a lot. Like just give us an example of like a couple of the awards that you guys have each.
A good question, because it's encouraging to see the birds you bred do well. So I have won the National Bird Show, which is an annual event. I've won the Cockatiel division as well as the Parrot division. There's a multi-year process to become a grand champion exhibitor for the National Finch and Softbill Society, a champion exhibitor for the Parrot Society. So some of these things you have to earn like 3,000 or 4,000 points to get them. So it can take you a decade or more. So it pays off to be persistent and to enjoy the hobby.
So as far as like starting with the show or getting one going, is there like a specific location you guys get the shows done or at, or to like different locations?
No, there's not a specific location. We hold shows all over the United States. We have shows in California, in Texas, in Florida, in Kentucky. Come on out to Kentucky, to the Northeast, to Michigan, to Wisconsin. I mean, we've really got shows kind of all over the United States. There are kind of specific, things that you need to, if you were ever going to hold your own show, there are definitely things about the show hall and the dimensions of the room and the supplies that you would need. But no, there's shows all over the place. We have, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 50 shows usually a year, somewhere in that range. In 2020, of course, when the pandemic hit, we had only a couple shows, I think, in 2020. And last year, I think a lot of people were eager to get back out. So we had a lot last year, and we have a lot this year. If anybody is interested in trying to find where a show near you might be, go to the NCS website, which is www.ncscockatiels.org. There's an exhibition tab, and it's called the show calendar. You can get on there and see where all the shows are for the year. And even if you get on there now and it doesn't look like there's a show in your area, a lot of the shows affiliate later throughout the year. So keep checking back and you might see a show near you.
We'll also have a link on that in the description. So like people that might be interested in this, or, even if you was to go to a show, you're not obligated to show a bird. You could just go and watch, right? Exactly.
Absolutely.
Just go and see and get a feel out of it. Like maybe people that are just getting into showing birds or might be interested in doing something, we'll have a link of that down in the description, and, people can go check it out.
Yeah, I definitely encourage anybody who even just owns birds. I said this a minute ago, back in the beginning that, a lot of us do show and we do exhibit, but we're a group of just cockatiel enthusiasts. We're cockatiel nuts. That's what we are. We're a bunch of bird nuts. So, I mean, it's great to be around people that just have birds and love birds. And you can make, one of the best parts about this hobby to me is not only the cockatiels, but the friendships that you have through this hobby. I mean, some of my best friends in the world are in this hobby. Susan and I have been friends for a decade or more, and we've been the best of friends, and we do all kinds of stuff together and travel the country together, and it's fantastic. We've been everywhere together, from California to New Jersey, literally all parts of the United States. And so it's absolutely fantastic, and so you can really network well, and it's just a blast. And you never know until you try it. So I would encourage anybody. Whenever I first started in this, I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. I just had some pet birds, and who knows. But then I went to my first show and was just hooked. And I was like, this is for me, and I haven't looked back.
I got a quick glance at the I think it's the National. I'm not exactly sure what the show is called, but I know it's the one in Oklahoma. Like, it wasn't too long ago. I think it was like
it's the National Bird Show.
Yes, and it looks so cool. And I seen like all these breeders that I know like that had went, and I was like, oh my God, I want to go so bad. So like I really would like to just go to that. Like that looks cool. It looks fun.
Well, you should have came this last year, because Susan and I were both there, and I was the judge for the cockatiel division.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
It looks so cool. And I seen like all these like huge birds. There was like a black palm cockatoo, I think I see, and I was like, oh my God, look at all those birds. Like it looks so cool. But yeah, I'll let Sean get back into his question now.
Yeah, so this question is both for both of you guys. As far as your show quality cockatiels go, do you guys also have regular cockatiels like as pets or breeders, or you specifically breed show quality birds, or how does that work?
Well, I guess let me start by saying I fell in love with the cockatiel because of their personality.
Yep.
I fell in love with the cockatiel because of their sweet disposition. And, I will never forget my very first cockatiel was a white-faced male named Doc, because he was, whenever I first got him, he was a mean little devil. And so I called him Dr. Evil. And so I shortened it to Doc once I got him tamed. But my passion for the cockatiel goes back to their personality and their sweet demeanor. Right behind me, I don't know if you can see or not, but that's a brooder with some babies in it.
So we can see your ribbons too. They look really nice.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. But it goes. The majority of the birds that I breed and produce go to pet people and are in the pet world out there. However, now all of my cockatiels are I wouldn't say they're necessarily show quality, but they show purpose, or they serve show purposes. Yeah, that's what I would say. I would say Susan's probably in the same boat.
I would agree with that. All of my birds generally start out as pets. I mean, I love them dearly, and they get probably fed better than I feed myself, which is typical a lot of pet owners, right? Which is important to get your birds ready for shows. You have to have good nutrition. So all of them are pets, but I agree with Josh. I think my cockatiels and some of my other parrots are at a high enough level where I'd consider them all quality exhibition stock. And I would prefer to sell anything I breed to other exhibitors, because I talked about those end of year awards. If I could have other people showing my nice birds, if I can't be at a show, but they're there representing me, that's just as good. And I like to help other people out, especially novices with nice quality birds that do well in shows and do well for their breeding programs. For example, I donated a pair of cockatiels to the Milwaukee show last year as a fundraiser to help pay for the judges' expenses and hotel costs. And, show hall rental shows are very expensive to host. But the pair of cockatiels I donated, one of the birds went on to win the show in Louisiana in January.
Wow.
So
wow.
It says it was a nice quality bird. It was a bird that I bred, a hen, and that she went on to win. It's great somebody else can use her, and they're still showing her.
So you mentioned, Susan, you said that like your birds have to be like have a special nutrition. Now this leads me to my next question. Like I know for like me specifically, I know people that have showed a lot of goats in like ADGA and AGS, and like they have like right before a show, you have to like almost switch up the goat's diet and not like feed it like real heavy foods and like make it so it's not like super large, you know what I mean? So like when you go into a show, like within the couple weeks leading up to a show, is there like special things you have to do to get ready, like get your bird ready as far as diets go and like things of that nature, like baths and whatnot?
Yeah, as far as nutrition goes, it's very important to be consistent with good nutrition because it takes those birds a while, over the course of a year or several years, depending what the species is, to actually grow new feathers. So if it goes through a period of nutritional stress, you can get stress bars in feathers, and it can take a long time to get rid of those. So consistent nutrition, there's no changing things up right before a show. I give them a good seed mix, a good pellet mix. I give them some egg food, and they love their greens, whether it's spinach or kale or different things. The cockatiels in particular like their leafy greens. But the one thing you do have to do before a show to get their feathers in condition is to spray, mist the birds. So I've got a couple gallons pump sprayer, and I go around and spray all my birds. Generally, you use cold, cool water. It helps tighten up the feathers and get them to pull the barbs together, pull the tails that might be frayed together. So spraying is about the best thing you can do for conditioning. And then also, if your bird has never been in a show box before, you can do some show box training where you put them in for a couple hours and get them used to it. So it reduces a lot of stress during the show.
Okay.
Especially
what do you say, Josh?
No, I agree with everything you're saying. The biggest thing is the spraying part. I mean, as far as what you can do beforehand is spray, spray, spray. I mean, it really promotes the bird to naturally preen themselves. So once and the birds love it. So we're not saying, I mean, the birds just, it's funny. I have on like my TikTok account, my birds doing like this funny little motion with and I'm like, splish splash, they were taking a bath, that kind of thing. They absolutely love it. And I mean, they do, the birds like come to the bars wanting it. It's just like they went in the wild and they're taking a bath with it, and it promotes natural preenings where their feathers do look nice and tight, because a loose feathered bird or a lot of pin feathers or things like that on the bird is not permissible in the show, or not permissible. It's not wanted for a show bird. Yeah.
So this question is for Josh. As far as showing birds go for cockatiels, is there a specific color mutation, like as far as showing goes, or doesn't really matter?
No. I mean, for cockatiels, you can show any color mutation. There are, there's a lot of work to do in the breeding community with rare mutations. Rare mutations meaning the emeralds, yellow cheeks, pastel faces, dominant silver, recessive silver, fallows. I'm sure I'm missing a mutation or two.
Faces. There's a lot of them.
What's that?
Screams.
Yeah, cream face. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of cream faces out there, but yes, that is another one. So no, you can show any color mutation on cockatiels, but a lot of the rare mutations don't typically have the size or substance to really be able to compete against the other mutations. Of course, the wild type or the standard type, which is the normal gray, the most work has been done with the normals and cinnamons and pearls and pieds and things like that. So they tend to have a little bit more size, a little bit more substance, a little bit more length. And I'm saying that as a general rule of thumb. That is not the always factor. But yeah, you can show any color you want to. They're just some mutations have a little bit of a harder time winning than some of the other ones.
So the next two questions we're going to ask lead right into this whole topic that we're on right now. So like, as far as when you're showing a cockatiel, is there a difference between males and females being shown, or males and females being being judged at the same time? Are they being judged differently?
Good question. And this is a subject we didn't get into too much, but whenever we are setting the birds up on how they're going to be judged originally, we split up all the birds by color mutations. So there's a total of 15 what we call sections. So the first 7 sections are the novice sections, and then section 8 through 15 are the advanced sections. So section 8, for example, is normal. So it's normals, cinnamons, Latinos, pearls, pieds, white faces, rares. Rares are the section all by themselves. And then section 15 is the grand champion section. Within each of those color mutation sections, there's a little bit more to it, but basically we split them up by being cocks and hens. So there's the normal cocks, the normal hens. We judge the normal cocks, and then we judge the normal hens, and then we take the best normal cock and compare it to the best normal hen, and we decide which one meets the standard best, and that's the section winner. But as far as, is there a preference towards males or females? No, there's not a preference towards them. I mean, tons of males win best in shows, and tons of females win best in shows. So it just depends on, it all goes back to the standard of perfection and which bird meets the standard the best.
So, okay, that makes a lot of sense then. This question goes for Susan. So earlier you had mentioned how when showing a cockatiel about the boxes, remember you said training the birds to go in the show boxes, especially if it's a bird that's never been in something like that, and there's gonna be people that are walking around like the judge seeing the bird. You don't want the bird to be flying and going crazy in the small box. As far as training to the bird to be comfortable in there, how would that work? You said one of the ways was leaving it in there for a couple hours every day, but.
So my birds actually travel to shows in their show boxes, where some people actually take them in a separate cage and then move them into their show box before a show. So mine get a few hours bouncing around in a car, depending how far I have to go, in their show box for training. In general, it's the babies. It's the new birds. Like the first show I go to for this year, 2022, any babies that I bred last fall or the babies from this spring, where it's their first show, I try to put them in a show box with a more experienced, like bird that has been out to shows, might have won a show. And there are some birds where they just decide they do not want to show, and they will not stand up in the show box. They won't show themselves off to a judge. So after you try them for a couple times and you say, hey, this bird just doesn't like exhibition, you might save it at home and just use it as a breeder, or sell it as a pet, or sell it to another exhibitor for breeding. You want the birds to enjoy it.
Before we go any further, I just want to show some of the people. Earlier we spoke about the requirements of the showing. These are some of Josh's birds, right? And then on the right here we have some of Susan's birds. To all the people that are wondering. So yeah. Heather?
Yeah, so back into the question I was asking earlier, I know we talked about the male or female. Now, as far as age goes, is there a different qualification based on age? I'm assuming you don't want like a too young bird, because it would be like a little difficult to train it into a show box or whatever. A younger bird might be like a little more afraid of the unknown. So how does that work?
Well, there is no age limit or age restrictions on the birds. As long as the bird is healthy and weaned, you can show it. It's probably not, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. I think you can probably show birds that are a little too young if they're not comfortable with it. Showing can be stressful on the birds at times. So if the bird is freshly weaned or too young, it may not be a good idea too. So I think it really just depends on the individual bird and how comfortable they are in the show box, or maybe if it's a close by show and not a show that's halfway across the country. So there's not really an age restriction on the birds, but you just got to use good judgment You may not want to show a bird that's too young. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's probably not a good idea to show a bird that's too old. So.
Oh.
Right.
So there are also the special genre classes, like at the NCS specialty show.
Oh, yeah.
There actually is a baby show for birds that were bred in 2022. They can be shown in the baby show, are only composed of babies. So, you know, sometimes babies are at a disadvantage until they're a year or two old. They haven't really matured and reached their full potential, I would say. So that baby show is kind of fun because it's like the potential, the future of the hobby is in those birds.
And as a judge, I don't, because, you know, like going back to what I was talking about with the closed show tags, I don't really know the ages of the birds. So all I'm seeing is what's in front of me. So
right. You can tell by what class it's entered in, whether it's a baby. I mean, I've got a show tag here. So you can see by which class it's entered in, whether it's an old bird or this year's baby.
Okay.
Something is 1 year old versus 10 years old. You just don't know. Right.
And so like, what are the steps? Say you're talking to the audience now. Someone sees this, they're like, "Oh my God, I want to get into this. I want to get into showing cockatiels." Like, what are the first couple steps a person that wants to get into showing cockatiels needs to do, as far as like joining or parrots even? What are the first couple steps? Obviously, what number one would be like figuring out how to join into the National Cockatiel Society, correct?
well, actually, you do not even have to be a member to show in one of our shows. I would love to encourage anybody and everybody to become a member of the National Cockatiel Society. We do have a quarterly journal that comes up with a lot of information, our networking, our Facebook page. We have a members only Facebook page that has a lot of great information on it as well. But no, I mean, for anybody out there that wants to dip their toes into the exhibition world, all you have to do is go on our website and find where a show is. And if you want to bring a bird to show, bring your bird, bring your cockatiel. You may not know everything about the show world, but a lot of I think it's easier to understand how a show works if you can see your bird in the show and you can watch where your bird is, because sometimes to new people it's a little confusing to watch the process and understand the process whenever none of the birds are theirs. But if you have a bird in the show, it makes it a little bit easier to follow the flow and the process and what the judge is doing. But first step is literally just to come to a show, bring your bird or don't, either one. I will say this, we're a very warm, welcoming group. We want to have anybody and everybody possible. So if you have cockatiels or if you have parrots or whatever you might have, come join us. We would love to have you. We get so excited when new people come because it doesn't happen all the time. A lot of us have been around for a long time, and so we love seeing new faces.
Right.
One last question before we let you guys go. As far as showing cockatiels, like I personally am interested, like in the near future, I want to get into like. So, like I'm definitely gonna check out the website. But as far as like showing goes, do you have to like register like a couple weeks beforehand? Could you just go that day and then just get in?
Great question. No, there is no registration process. However, even though there's no requirement for that, whenever you go on the NCS website and you go to the shows, there's a point of contact under each show, or there's the show host. I would definitely encourage you to either email them or connect with that person. Let them know that you're coming. One thing that is we do have, not super strict, but we have times when the show starts and when the show ends. And if we know that somebody's coming, we know to look for that person, or that there's not just some stranger walking in the door. But yeah, definitely connect with that show manager and let them know that you're coming, and they'll be prepared for you, and let everybody else know that you're coming and all that kind of stuff. So even though you don't have to, it's a good gesture to let them know that you're coming.
If you're a first-time exhibitor and you let that show host know ahead of time that you'll be there, they might be able to find a couple show boxes for you to use to borrow for the event, so you can blend right in like a pro.
Yeah, it sounds like a very inclusive community. It sounds really nice, and like I'm from the way you guys have explained it, everybody sounds like very welcoming.
Exactly.
And it sounds like it's something really fun to do, honestly. But
It's a blast.
Yeah,
it's fun. We've, like Josh said in the beginning, we've made lifelong friendships out of this. I've got friends in North Carolina and Kentucky and Pennsylvania and all around the United States, people I never would have met if I hadn't been exhibiting birds. But what keeps me also attending shows is it's all about learning. It's a learning experience, and there's always something new to learn about your birds. And if the one term you hear a lot is aviary blindness. So if you breed your birds in your house or in your aviary and you never bring them out to compare to other birds at a bird show, you don't know really what the quality of your genetics is. So you get that aviary blindness, they call it. You have to get out and compare and see where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, what do you need to improve on.
Even if you don't show a bird, just to get your name out there. Like, say, for example, like myself personally, if I want to start showing cockatiels or want to get into it, you know, just going and talking to people like you guys, and, you know, getting to know you guys. And in the future, if I'm ever interested in buying one of your babies, I'll be like, hey, Josh, or hey, Susan, like, you know, I definitely want to start with a pair or a baby from you guys. You know, why not? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Well, that's going to be all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Josh, and thank you, Susan. We really appreciated all the knowledge you gave us today and the viewers. And yeah, we look forward to the episode airing. And yeah, that's it. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you both for having us, and we hope to see you at a show soon.